The question arises, where did this information come from? Our knowledge is primarily derived from written records. In the case of Alexander the Great, there are only a handful of ancient historical accounts, Livy, Tacitus, Suetonius, that mention him. None of these chroniclers lived during Alexander's time. They all recounted the story of someone they never personally knew. These historians lived and wrote their accounts more than a century after Alexander's era. To put it in perspective, it would be akin to me attempting to craft an ostensibly original history of George Washington. What's more, the extant copies of these historical works were transcribed several centuries, generally between 700 to 900 years, after the original texts were authored. They are essentially hand-copied reproductions of other hand-copied reproductions. Thus, some of these surviving historical records were compiled around 1,000 years after Alexander the Great's supposed existence. Complicating matters, some of these texts are marred and incomplete, leading historians to make educated guesses when restoring the missing segments. A history professor from Columbia University, whose course I attended, once conveyed that history is a form of art. It's akin to painting a picture. Historians piece together available written materials and integrate the archaeological findings from the era they are studying to craft a representation of what they believe might have occurred. Yet, these representations are often presented as facts within educational institutions. On the other hand, there is a wealth of written documentation, with a significant portion composed by individuals who lived contemporaneously with Jesus. This includes accounts from people who were opposed to Jesus' teachings, such as Jewish and Roman historians. Some of the existing copies of these documents were transcribed within a century after the originals. When employing the same methodology that historians use to construct an account of Alexander the Great, there is considerably more source material available for historians to compile an account of the life, death, and resurrection of Christ than there is for Alexander. It is not a matter of opinion, it is a matter of fact. There is more substantial evidence supporting Jesus' resurrection from the dead than there is for the mere existence of Alexander the Great. However, I acknowledge that accepting the fact of Jesus' resurrection carries far more profound consequences. Believing in Jesus' resurrection, as you accept the historical existence of Alexander the Great, leads to the imperative question of why Jesus asserted the reality of heaven and hell as actual places. Those who place their trust in him exclusively find their eternal home in heaven, while everyone else faces eternal damnation in hell. This is an immensely weighty matter.